Now, Electricity Minister Dr Kgosientso Ramokgopa has briefed Cabinet on a plan to address the energy crisis. This comes as the country continues to be subjected to higher stages of load shedding. Last month, the minister visited 18 power stations to assess their performance and challenges. Let's bring in former Eskom CEO Jacob Maroga. Mr. Maroga, I appreciate your time this morning. Now, give us some insights into what led to the decision to firstly hold a special cabinet meeting with the energy minister to discuss extending the lifespan of the power plants and obviously the potential conflict with the Just Energy Transition Plan.
Good morning, Hugo. As I understand it, the minister went to cabinet to brief cabinet on his observations from his tour of the power stations. And the element, one of the elements, I think it's only one of the elements, I don't think it's a total discussion in cabinet. It's about extending some of the power stations. As you know, there is a program to shut down some of the power stations, some of them end of life, some of them because of performance. And I think as part of solving the problem, everything is on the table to be reviewed, including whether it's wise to shut down generating units in circumstances where you have an energy crisis. So that's how I understand it.
And from what I understand, it doesn't make sense to go and shut down generating units when you are struggling to power the country. But obviously, it then raises the question of something called the Just Energy Transition and a plan which South Africa committed to in 2021. And the countries or the bigger nations pledged to give $8.5 billion to this process. Where does that put that? Does it kind of hang in the balance if South Africa goes ahead and carries on with these coal-powered plants?
Well, look, I think one has to look at the long-term decarbonization commitment. It is a 2050 commitment. It's not a, shut down tomorrow. So as and when conditions on the ground dictate certain dynamics, like, for instance, now you are in an emergency, you can't just be shutting down a power station on the basis that, you've got a commitment, which is a 2050 commitment. And that decision compromises your energy security today. So I think in the broader scheme of things, operational decisions have to be made given, in the material conditions on the ground. I mean, we have seen when, Europe was faced with the energy crisis because of the Russia-Ukraine war, they had to make decisions about some of the stations that they put in reserve, and they actually have to bring them back. But it was a temporary measure to deal with the short-term energy crisis. So I don't think it's any different. And I don't think people making a lot of noise about the long-term commitment when you're dealing with medium, short-term problems is an issue.
So how does the government plan to balance the need for immediate solutions to the energy crisis with obviously the long-term goals of the Just Energy Transition Plan?
Well, what I'm saying, because of the crisis, the energy crisis, the deep energy crisis that we're in, you can't be making it worse on the basis of long-term commitments. I think when you have a conversation to say, I've got a crisis today, therefore I cannot be shutting these stations. However, this is still the overall plan. I think people understand. You can't just be inflicting pain, because if you inflicting pain today, the economy may not be there tomorrow. So the just energy transition is actually meaningless. So I don't think it is I think it's a big issue. I mean, obviously, things will change from time to time. And as long as there's a dialogue of what is the overall commitment within the current issues that we have to deal with.
Well, these nations from the West have made a pledge of $8.5 billion United States dollars. They made that pledge, I think, close on 2 years ago. Has any of this money been received yet?
Well, I'm not sure. I don't know. But I think I just can see what has been reported. It looks like some money has flown. And I think, it's just, the 8.5 is just a small part of a bigger requirement. If you look at the total decarbonization program, it goes into many billions of dollars, much bigger than the 8.5. So we are still in a very long journey of decarbonization, and there's going to still be long conversations as and when things change on the ground. Certain things may be fast-tracked, certain things may be slowed down, and it's going to be determined by a balancing of energy security and decarbonization commitment. And I think all nations do that. All nations, things don't unfold as you planned, and then you will have to, make adjustments as you go, as long as you continue to have a dialogue with partners about what the long-term commitments are and what you're doing now in terms of the material conditions on the ground.
Mr. Maroga, we all know that there's a great big difference between a plan of action and actually implementation of that plan of action. When the electricity minister was appointed, there was a lot of excitement about we are now moving away from stage 6 load shedding. There is light on the proverbial horizon, so to speak. But much of that hasn't actually happened. Are we expecting too much from the electricity minister at this juncture?
Well, I think the electricity minister did indicate that things are, it's not as if just his mere appointment, magically load shedding will disappear. It's hardly weeks that he's been appointed. He's still, processing what he's seeing. He's gone to cabinet. So I don't think expecting a miracle end of load shedding after a few weeks of the electricity minister is rational. This is a deep problem. It's going to take some time to resolve. Some key and hard decisions are still going to be made. And I think I'm hearing him talking about both the short term and the long term, but I don't think expecting magic within weeks is reasonable.
Well, I don't really know if it's about expecting magic within weeks, because the government has known about the energy challenges for years, for decades, if you will. So the process is about implementation. Do you get the impression that government is ready to take the medicine and implement that which needs to be implemented in order to avert a further disaster?
There is a national energy plan which was approved in July of last year. This is essentially what the minister is implementing. And I think there is certain things that have been done, but there are certain issues that are emerging. So I think, in all fairness, I think the minister needs to be given time, and the cabinet, yes, we've been in this crisis for a while, but most specifically, I think this current energy crisis stems out of the poor performance of the generation fleet, which has worsened in the past 3 years. And I think it's important that we don't conflate the long-term issue and the short-term issue, which are the dismal performance of generation, which has worsened in the past 3 years, and that's what is being dealt with.
Mr. Maroga, I'd like to get your opinion on the politics of electricity, if you will. Eskom does not have a substantive CEO at the moment. There's an energy minister who's responsible for energy and whose some of the responsibilities seem to collate with that of the electricity minister. What are the implications of this relationship, if you will, of these three entities? Will it hamper the progress of us moving away from stage 6 where we're at to what would be normal, which is no load shedding?
Well, firstly, let me comment. I think the appointment of the next minister at first, I think, surprised most. But when you look at the incumbent, one has hope based on his very quick understanding of the issues. So I think that is a positive. Of course, in any environment, the issues of road clarity is important. And I'm sure the minister, the board, and all the ministers that are affected are seized with making sure there can be road clarity that assist in the situation and not hamper in resolving the situation. So we'll wait as things unfold. Currently we don't have a permanent CEO at Eskom. There's an acting CEO. And when they appoint a permanent CEO, one has to see how the road clarity is resolved in a way that is empowering to solving the issue. Yes, at face value, there may be issues of road clarity issues, but I think with dialogue and discussions, those things can be sorted out.
And finally, before we let you go, sir, how will the government engage with and address, obviously, the concerns of civil society and other groups that are environmental groups, rather, who may have reservations about the potential conflict with the Just Energy Transition Plan?
Again, the Just Energy Transition is not an instant switching off of coal. It's a long-term commitment which goes to 250 net zero. Now, and it has to balance also in this journey. It has to balance two things: environmental commitments, but also energy security. You can't have a situation where when you're threatened with energy security, you don't review your decisions to make sure you still have energy security, but you're still committed to the long term. Every country all over the world, when things happen that threatens one or the other, they will have to review their decisions in the context of balancing energy security and long-term environmental commitment. So I don't think people should be concerned as long as there's dialogue. If you're going to extend the life of some of the power stations, what is then your overall plan in the totality of things? And also, we need to be very clear as well that certain technological choices that will replace coal are still not mature. We must understand that. Renewables alone cannot solve the problem. It requires battery storage. It requires supporting technologies, and those are still not mature. They're still not on the ground. So these decisions about energy security and decarbonization is going to continue to be made as and when conditions on the ground changes.
Former Eskom CEO Jacob Maroga, appreciate your time this morning.